Hello, PLO Order, another video, and this time it is the Studygame review. So, first of all, if you don't know what Studygame is, it's our once a month home game where everyone has an opportunity to play versus other players from PLO Order, and then those hands are reviewed in these kinds of videos, so you will get review of your gameplay for free. So let's get started. And this time we played this on ranked ones, and we had PLO 4 pool open with Super Splash Bot. And the good thing in PLO and ranked ones, or anything on ranked ones, is that when you get the hand histories, you can see opponent's hole cards. So we have full hole cards exposed in this replay, and it started heads up, but we got full table pretty fast. And I filtered hands where the flop is seen. That's 71 hands from the session. So let's get started. On some hands, they are pretty no-brainers, and then on trickier spots, we focus a bit more. But the first one, heads up, open from the bottom, call, and then on the flops, it's bottom pair and flush draw versus top pair, gut shot, and a flush draw. So both players hit. Half about c-bet. Definitely could be checked back, but first hand of the session. And there's a call, and then there gives me 2 pair. Mallory has the same hand, and he donks, which is decent, representing 7-8. And having the 8 blocker, having a flush draw blocker. But I go, and river is a 3. Now, the thing is that Mallory picks up 2 pairs now. So he beats my overpair and flush draw. So it's kind of spot where you have made hand. Do you want to turn it into a bluff? Like trying to make me fold 10-9, maybe 4-5. And in heads up, people call rivers way more with weaker hands than in normal pots. So I think the check back here, or the check, it's not check back, but the check is fine. Point for showdown. Luckily for me, I had higher 2 pairs. And then we have the hard. I might wanna switch the hard off. It might be important, but then no one played weird stuff. There was one player on my left who was tighter than the others, but let's open the hard if it seems that it's required. Another heads up pot, and it's nothing versus 9s. 9's a bet, it's a fold, nothing there. And now we start with a 3-handed, button open. I call, this is very loose. I even don't remember all the hands I played because I was streaming at the same time and we had a lot of giveaways and stuff. So if there's some really weirdly played hands, that might be it. Here I'm probably just calling to keep action. Normally this is a clear fold because 300, your small blind range should be quite the same as in 6-max. If you remember, we have the video of how to adjust 3-handed versus 6-handed. In the end, the strategy for all 3 positions in 3-handed is very close to what it is in 6-handed, so you don't even have to adjust in any way, and this would be just a fold. But we hit the pair, Mallory has 2 pairs, and we give up and could have saved half a blind or actually more, almost 3. There's a splash. Can't remember if there was actually a splash money in the previous hand. No. That would explain, but now, oh, sorry. No, there's no splash. This hand, these 12 cents means that there's 4 BB, 3 BB splash. So there's 3 big blinds, dead money. And limping is definitely an option here, but 300 I decided to open. With 3 BB splash could actually fold. I would say that when the splash becomes 4 or 5 BBs, it's way more significant. And we got nothing. Then on the turn we pick up the cutter and give up. Now Jonah, what he turns is a set with the flush draw, so that's awesome turn for him. And Mallory has the open-ender with the flush draw. So now I think Jonah should bet. Flop goes check, check. Turn he bets. That indicates that he has something. And now on the river, I mean, if he had a misdraw, he would barrel most of the time. So this is very often some kind of bluff catcher. With the hands he is representing the check fold, he would very often or should barrel on the river. Because Mallory, his range is so draw heavy when he checks the flop. So I think Jonah missed a bit there. Definitely should do it. It's tempting to trap, but before making that trap, you should think about what am I representing? What's my opponent's range? I mean, your range and your opponent range, how likely it is that he bluffs the river? And in this situation, it's very unlikely. Blind versus blind. 3-bet, call. I would. That's very close. If that should even call the 3-bet out of position, that's quite crappy hand. Double suited, you could, but single suited, not. And then on the flop, he has the pair and cutter. And if you call 3-bet with this hand, you just can't fold this flop. You have the cutter pair and backdoor flush draw. It's not consistent to first call the 3-bet and then fold that flop. I mean, you could definitely argue even about raising. Of course, I wouldn't fold try aces, probably depending what I have, but you can put a lot of pressure on 3-bet in range. But definitely should call if you play the hand. But that's the problem with the hand, that if you don't hit the straight or set, your hand sucks. Defending big blind, bit loose, flopping trips, running hot, and raising. This is the first raise on the flop. This shows you how it sucks to be out of position, because if you raise, it's like, well, he's going to fold pretty much everything but overpairs, or then he calls with jacks, or he has the 4. So when you raise, there's huge fold equity, and really hard to get value out of position. But if you call, then you have to check the turn. He might check back, and you just give him cheap price to see all the way up the river, and you don't have the boat yet. So it's just out of position. Even when you flop strong, it's hard to get a lot of value. But I decided to raise just to sort of see what happens when we raise, and then start to generate dynamics for the rest of the session. And he calls with the jack, then we barrel, and he gives up. This is actually something that I've seen a lot of reps do. When you raise that flop and barrel on the turn, the fold equity on the turn is so high, because their flop calling range is often jack or overpair, and if they fold all of those on the turn, they're overfolding turn a lot. But hard to do anything else when you don't pick up any additional equity on the turn. Once again, bad defense on the small blind should fold this hand, but flopping the nut flush draw. And then flop goes checks through. Should not stab here. This is way too optimistic. If I had a checker then like ace, ace, jack, ace, ace, 10. I mean ace, jack, ace, 10 with the flush draw, then I think it's good. But here, with just nickel flush, don't. And Mallory has the nut straight for sure. And goes value bet the river. I think the value bet is fine. I mean, I don't really have a lot of full houses here. It says also, if he bets, what am I going to call with? Trip kings, not sure even. So it's kind of bad that it's really hard to get calls. Button open, very loose big blind defense, but flopping strong. So you can see that I'm playing a lot from the blinds, which I shouldn't. So definitely good value for the others. I would like to see a raise here. I raised the chip board earlier, so just raising here would mean that I would have raised all the chip boards. And now exactly what happens, then goes check, check, and then I made the straight on the river, but if I didn't have the queen 9, like I would have just queen 8, it would kind of suck here. And point for value, 1/3. Once again, first 1/3 bet on the river of the session. Kind of see what happens and show them that I have lots of sizings. And it's really hard to get called if we bet bigger. So what we want here is 9/7 to make a call, over pair with blockers to make a hero call. And we have calls from kings. And the thing is that he's blocking the full houses with 10 and 3. The problem is when I call the flop, my range is very overpair 8 heavy. Hard to have any other hands than overpairs and 8s. And now the only overpair he beats is the queens. Trips beat him, jacks, 10s, 9s maybe. Well, 9s could be bluffed. Jack 9, 9. Who knows? So it's not horrible call to 1/3 sizing. But it shows that with 1/3 sizing on the river, you can actually get a lot more value than bigger bets, as people just can't fold to 1/3. Especially when their range is kind of weak, so we can make a big value bets. Very loose open, 3 bet, have to call, and losing to a flush. I hope I tighten up when the table starts to get full. Let me see, is this important? Have to send a message to home planet. All right, blind versus blind, queens versus ace queen, and flopping over pair, bottom pair. Mikael has open ender and flush draw. I would definitely start betting here. And he does. I make a really loose call. I'm quite sure the plan was to bluff on hearts with the queen blocker on good situation. Of course, now we can see that it's a horrible. 5 comes, very good spot for Mikael to go big and force me to fold a better hand. And it works, so well played. 1 BB splash, open from Mallory. Bit loose open, bit loose defend. And, sorry. And monotone board, bets half a pot. I don't make moves. The 2 blocker, if I had king or ace of hearts, then definitely we could float here or just raise it up. Kind of open, small blind defense with 10s and big blind. I would say it's a tight fold compared to some other hands people have played. And then top pair versus pocket 10s, half a pot, and call this call. Oh, he has the queen too. Didn't see that one. Of course he calls with the queen. So ace queen versus ace queen, barrel, call, and then river should go chip chip. And it does. Okay, now we have full table. Joshua opens, fold, fold. Jonah defends, big blind. This is a fold from, from the button. Just a fold. Now we're 6-handed versus under the gun open. We should call with pretty tight range here on the button, and this should be double suited. Queen Jack 9-9. Not a huge fan of calling, but let's Let's see that one. Sorry, I'm going to open up. It has somehow closed, so I'm going to open up the Omaha Pro. Just a second. Would be better if this was open, but it was. So the hand we had in was Queen Jack 9-9 and button versus early position, and single suited Queen Jack 9-9. Oh, sorry, it's in the 9-9 range. Well, Queen Jack 9-9 is a call from the button, so I'm corrected. It's definitely then connected enough, so I stand corrected. My initial thought is it's a fold, so it's good to check. And pretty good flop for Joshua. Pair, cutter, flush draw, a half a pot, could go three quarters on the flush draw boards. And Jonah calling with try nines without really good backdoors even. That's with loose. The problem is that, okay, you might have the best hand now, but if the turn is a 9, it's good for you. If it's a non-club 10, it's good for you. So you have 5 outs that help you. Any other is not that clear, and even if a 10 comes and opponent goes beats, it's really hard to call. So the problem I'm calling here is that you just have to fold so many turns in rivers. Like, there you go. So you can save money and just fold there. Like you had it. Opponent had 8 high and you had 25%, so that tells everything. Kind of open button 3-bet and call, and then flop is 9 high. Jonah makes the pair, Mallory misses it. It's a spot where Mallory should check back. No diamonds. He has the cut shot, overcards. Would be happy to see the turn. There's a half a pot bet. In 3-bet pot, you can bet half a pot with more polarized range. And there's a raise from Jonah. Not sure if I like the raise. 1 diamond blocker. The problem is that Mallory will have some aces with flush draw in half a pot range and some really strong hands. But it works out this time, he didn't. Another big splash, 8 BBs, and Jonah limps in. Splash pot limping is definitely viable strategy. And then Joshua comes with the min raise. We will see a lot of these. Not a good strategy, so just don't pay attention to that min raise. And then there's button min raise, not a good strategy, so people just doing weird stuff. We flop the top pair with cutter. Jonah has to wrap and close half a pot. We call. Now we have 2 pairs with top pair. And Jonah check. Pairing turns are really good to barrel. Of course, when he blocks all the straight draws, my range is really Queen X heavy. So I understand the check back. If there was a flush draw on the board, on the flop, then I would barrel with the draw. But now it's quite obvious that I have the queen when he has all the straight cards. And then I have top 2 pairs. And I'm going to check draw the river, and Jonah goes for bet. I don't like the bet. I mean, when he bets flop checks turn, he's not representing much here. And if my range is queen heavy, that he should have thought when he checks the turn, that's the reason why he checks the turn, because there's no fold equity, then there's no fold equity on the river. And of course, when I have queen 8, it's even easier to call, but I would have called the river with any queen, because it's just, it's a line that doesn't really add up with the story he's trying to tell. 3PP splash, open. Joshua is here to bang the doors. Very loose 3-bet, not good. We protocol with kings. Joshua has been the one who min raised on the previous hand, so might be with aggro. And then 1/3 bet. We have no blockers to make moves, and if we call, it's really hard to go to showdown and even win in there, because the hands from aggro players, the hands we beat at showdown probably bluffs at some point, and the hands that go to showdown probably beats our overpair very often. Jonah opens a bit loose open, 3-bet from small blind, and Jonah flopping the nuts. Alexander has ace high. Check fold is fine on that flop. And then, especially on 4-3 duos or the wheel board, the 3-better has ace X straights there that should be in the checking range, not check raise in the flop. So don't worry that if you check that flop, you always check fold. There's a lot of natural hands to protect the checking range. Under the gun open, I defend from the small blind. And then I flop the cutter with 1 spade blocker. Not enough to make moves. Then we have an interesting hand. Alexander open from middle position. Jonah defends big blind. And Jonah has the bottom open-ender. Alexander has the cut shot and overs. Without 10 or 8, check back here. And then there is an interesting... It's kind of... Both players could have 4 houses here. Easily. So now it's whether Alexander wants to bet. I mean, if we had aces or kings, would we bet here? And then river goes check check and ace 4 wins. Nice and open, a bit loose, defend from the small blind. And have to fold ace high flop, so once again very loose defend from the big blind, small blind. Here I thought because we have Joshua in the pot who has shown some aggressiveness. So when you have a gambler or action junkie on the table, then the value or the implied odds go up with sets and everything. Because it's way easier to stack off versus those people and build up the big pots. Very marginal call from the button even then, because the deuce is a dangler. And then Alexander donks the nuts. If I was Alexander, I would check and see if Joshua wants to bet, and then the other, me and Jonah has to act. So like if Joshua bets, one of us calls, you can shove and get the money in with the nuts. So I don't like the donking here when we have a very active player behind. And Joshua being Joshua. Both players miss the flop, so it's who makes the stab first. And interesting to see Joshua doesn't bet this board. He has the cutter, and it's kind of board where there's definitely enough fold equity to stab. And he doesn't really have that much backdoors. He has a couple of overs, but does he stab now? No. And then makes a stab on the river. I would much rather stab flop or turn than the river. And Mallory should not fold 2 pairs. But he does. Even has the 1 spade blocker. Of course, in Joshua's check back range, he has flush draws. But it's a pot size bet on the river, very polarizing. And, well, you can fold, but I think if you fold here everything, I mean, even if you had, like, let's say king high flush here, it has almost the same value as 2 pairs versus Joshua's range. Because when Joshua pots the river, it's pretty much nut flush or bluff. Really hard to see that with 10 high flush or straight. So if Mallory folds Jack 8, it's kind of he's folding everything but nuts here. It seems weird that they are not the same thing, but versus the opponent's range, they have the same value. So definitely should consider how much you're folding there on the river. Open 3-bet. These are the hands that, if opponent stacks up on most flops with aces, it's marginal or break-even-ish to call. So disconnected, it's probably slightly minus EV. If it's more connected, it becomes slightly plus EV. But I want to see flops. And we do hit it. And we hit the money in. Mallory has the 9. Definitely plays a role here because he's blocking a lot of 2 pairs, which means my range is weighted more towards some kind of draws. And after he makes a big c-bet, he just can't fold. And we pick it up. 5 BB splash, limp, 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 limp. Joshua. This is just bad poker, but I think Joshua was not here to play his best. He came to mess around with us, and Alexander does the same. So, we just see the flop. And flop is 9-7-6. No one has anything strong, and Joshua makes 110, 112th bet. And there's a raise, nice raise, because that bet is just so full of garbage. That's never a straight. Under the gun open, big blind defense, ace high. There's a bet. Definitely can bet ace high boards with super high frequency in position, especially blocking the king. But when Mikhail calls, he has ace very often. So Jonah should check back, see if he improves, especially when he builds up equity. But he decides to barrel. I don't like the barrel because on Rainbow Ace King 5 board versus under the gun, Jonah, he is blocking the straight draws, Queen Jack 10. So Mikhail will have ace here insanely often, and he's not fold. He is. I was about to say he's not folding an ace easily. I think that's a bit loose. He picks up even the flush draw. But he did. So there was the fold equity. Very bad open from the button. But Mikhail has been really tight. That's why I opened. So Mikhail had VPIP of 14 or something at this point. But he decides to call. We pick up the top pair. But Mikhail calls with just the backdoors. I see a lot of people doing this, but it's really hard to somehow justify that so it would be profitable. The only way you can make it profitable is that you get a return, slightly over half of the deck. Then you check, I would check back, and then you would hit the river, and one backdoor has 4% chance of hitting. So he will make either flush or straight around 10 to 12% of times only. Which means that to invest 23 cents, he would need to win over €2 when he makes the backdoor, and the pot is 78. So if I check back the turn, it's really hard to get enough implied odds. And if I bet the turn, he rarely have the odds. So he's drawing to make a draw out of position, and that's never profitable. So save your money, don't call here. And the problem with these flush draws is that if either one of them hits, it's really hard to value bet them because they're so small, and you need to bet a lot of rivers to get those implied odds. And it goes check, check. And he donks the river. The problem here is he's not representing anything. Well, queen jack. That's about it. Queen jack jack. Slow played sevens. Queen 7. I have 2 pairs I call. And there we go. You have pocket 8s, so when you bluff the river, you might try to make me fold pocket 9s or better. And when I bet the flop check the turn, it's just, I'm not very convinced that there's enough fold equity to make the bluff on the river. Of course, when you call the flop, there's no draws, queen 7 deuce. So you definitely have queen a lot of times. So you can represent the strong hand on the river for sure. Then we have min open. So Alexander has weird sizings. We make a weird call. Is there a splash money? Oh yeah, there's 4BB splash. That's why. And we see the flop. Aces c-bet half, but with aces I would just check here. I mean, versus 2 players, you have almost 0 fold equity versus 2 players. And then once called, it's hard to play the turns. And now half a pot on the turn. Now it's like, is this a bluff or value? Not so simple anymore. But it works. 2BB splash, limp from the button, call and call. And Jonah flopping 2 pairs. Everyone else flopping the top pair. Once again, dynamic board flush draw would definitely want to see 3/4 sizing and use the half a pot on locked and try boards. So definitely should, if you bet here, make it 3/4. And Alexander makes a fold with top pair. And check, check, and then we go to showdown and ace-3 wins. Nice. Triple B splash, open, call, and of course we want to see the flop. Everyone misses the flop. No one even has a lot of relevant blockers. Jonah and Alexander both have 1-6. And then comes 7. Now it's, if anyone makes the stab, he wins. And no one does, and then it goes check through and ace-queen wins. Easier to play when you see the opponent's whole cards. Got an open big blind defense, and both players hit top pair and flush draw. I have 2 pairs. Jonah has top pair with a flush draw and 1 overcard. And flop goes check, check. Both players thinking that would suck to be raised. Turn is a blank. I think I'm going to bet here for sure. And then comes the raise. And now the problem is that that raise, it could be random 3-3. But then again, we are blocking jacks. And if opponent had strong hand like 8s, wouldn't he donk the turn some of the time? And then it's like, top 2 pairs with flush draw. Definitely can't fold. And then to raise, we might be versus higher flush draw. We might be versus jack 8. We might be versus set. But definitely can't fold hand strong enough. And we board up on the river, makes your life a lot easier. And opponent bets 1/3. And now the only hand we are realistically afraid of is pocket 8s because we are blocking the jacks. So let's go for raise. Let's see if he calls. The thing is that our hand looks a lot like a draw. check back flop, just call turn, and all the draws miss. But Jonah makes a tight fold, doesn't hero call with top pair. A lot of players would call here with top pair or overpair, for sure. 3-bet with kings, call, try flop, 1/3 c-bet, and min raise. Min raise is good if you have reached that opponent folds a lot to them, but in reality, I would say that most players will never fold an overpair here to a min raise. And then doesn't barrel turn, so it's kind of stab. And I decide to go for bet. Protect the hand versus flush draws. I mean, if opponent check raises, we have to fold 2 outs. Not the end of the world. But min raise, flop, check turn. That is rarely any trick move. It's often one stab and one call. Just keep up. I think if you want to raise the flop, might want to do it with bigger sizing. But nowadays, no one folds like aces on 9-3-3 rainbow when someone raises. It doesn't work as it used to work before. 1 BB splash, there's a limp, raise, call. Joshua going bananas. And should definitely bet here. And wins the board. Ace high board after 3-bet, easy c-bet. 3 BB splash, we open, get heads up, and now it's versus top set. I decide to check. We have only backdoors. And it's not the board that... with the 10 of hearts, we could c-bet. So it wouldn't be horrible. This time we check, and opponent bets. Half a pot bet, once again, kind of weird sizing on that board. But of course, in 3-bet pots, you can use smaller sizing. When I check the flop, I would just want to fold. We shouldn't be making moves with 10 blocker if flush comes. And we have only backdoor flush draw, backdoor straight draw. Now with the 9, the 10 blockers actually start to be relevant if we get to the river. And opponent barrels should just fold here. And should have folded the flop. Nothing good comes from that call. 3 BB splash, Mallory opens, Joshua min raises. Bananas. But how to react when you have Joshua on your tables, who min raises, sometimes with really small, sometimes with really big. One good way is to tighten up a little and just play normal solid poker. I mean, Joshua is going to make a lot of minus EV moves and the money will come to you, but if you start to level yourself too much or you start to adjust too much and sort of get trapped into Joshua's games, it's no good. So wait for the hands and extract value. Top pair, middle pair, sorry. Joshua c-bets and Mallory has to fold. Open call. There's 4 BB splash. 2 pairs. No one bets. And there comes the stab with open-ender. When flop goes checks, it's like I can't fold 2 pairs. Alexander rarely has a really strong hand here, but the problem is that I don't like the river unless it's 9 or 4. So this call is kind of, we can 1 to 3 odds. So let's hope you check back the river with your tri-ace. But we can lucky and hit the 4, and now the plan changes. Let's go for check raise. And this bet, I mean, half a pot on the turn is not pocket 10. It's not ace 10. And he checks the flop. So Alexander has really weak range here. I decided to raise and go slightly bigger than just min raise or even 3x. It's like 3.5x, and hope an ace makes a call. But Alexander makes even bigger hero call and calls with the 10 here. Of course, once again, my range is so polarized that I either have a trips, a full house, or then I have a busted draw. So the 10 is kind of same value as ace. But it's just, I could turn some kind of pocket jacks with flush draw into a bluff with sucks with pocket 10. So I think it's way too loose call there. River check raise. And river check raises are 95% for value. So if you treat all river raises as value until proven otherwise, you're doing very good. So Alexander opens, Mikhail defends with kings, both players miss the flop, and now well, Alexander has open and ran flush draw, but I would like to keep the sizing same with bluffs, value hands, and draws, and since it's 9 board, you can bet half a pot. And there comes the really small raise, less than 3x, 2.5x, which is kind of a nice move. And oh boy, Mikhail hits the good turn. Oh, Alexander is, oh, that's, oh, didn't see he was shorty. Why haven't he reloaded? Okay, then I hit the pot, it's SPR, 90/2. Sorry, didn't see the stack size. Then pot get it in is fine. And that's why Mikhail raises and they get it in. Didn't see Alexander was shorty. Wouldn't expect anyone not to reload on these games. Open call, fold call, and then we have some action. We have a double cutter, we have cutter with the nut flush draw, and we have the middle set. There comes the c-bet. There comes the call. Actually, Joshua, you can even just raise here. You have been pretty active, so use that image. Or you can call and see the safe turn, for sure. And now comes the flush, and Joshua makes a good fold here. Very often people call with sets because they know they have outs for full house. But if we think about the implied odds, they're going to hit the full house here around 1 out of 4 times. So to call €1, you need to win €4. So if you call, the pot is 340. So you need to get at least 60 cents as value. And now the problem is, if the board pairs and you're out of position, if you don't like half a pot, well, of course, king high flush would call, but if he has jack high flush or something, would he call your donk? And of course, now when, let's say, if you get 75 cents for value on the river, then it's profitable to call with the set. So it's very close, but quite often, if the board pairs and you don't, the opponent is going to fold. Of course, king high flush would not fold, probably. But it just shows you that it's hard to convert. It's very close. Like if he had bet 70 cents, you should call always. And now when he bets 1, you don't need that much implied. If he has bet like 140, you need 140 as impliers for the river. So it's very close, but I like the fold. Tight, but I think it's the correct one. Button versus big blind on ace high board. There's a c-bet and there's a fold. Nothing super interesting on that one. Open Joshua 3-bets. That's an old school isolation 3-bet. And nice flop, ace high, c-bet and should fold. Yeah. It's nice to flop ace high flops when you 3-bet with non-aces. Well, then we have aces. First ones of the day. And flopping overpair flush draw, one pair. On that board, money is going to get in. If someone raises, we just stick it in. Yeah, and here we go. And opponent has only 30%. Picking up the open ender. And can't hit the river. And we're running like gods. 1 BB splash. Blind versus blind, open. Joshua makes 3-bet with legitimate hand. Alexander calls, and flop is very often what happens. Alexander checks, Joshua bets small, half a pot or 1/3, and Alexander folds. But Joshua doesn't bet. I think that's a bad check. You have the 8 blocker, and you have folded, but you have ace high. So just bet the flop. Well, unless you have the reach that turn is 8, which makes your life easier. And then comes the raise and nice turn. But let's say the turn is 9 of diamonds and Alexander bets, would you call? So unless the turn is an 8, you kind of have to fold. Bit loose open. Very loose defense from Joshua, but he is going bananas. And then something for everyone. And Alexander has top 2 pair with open ender. And no one wants to compete. Open, weird 3-bet. Weird call, probably because Joshua has been 3-bet in half of his hands. We decide to see the flop in position. And then it says high. Joshua doesn't bet, 4 ways might be wise. And now turn is interesting because Jonah has blockers, Alexander has blockers, Joshua has blocker with a nut flush draw, and we have 2 pair with open ender. And then the flush comes home. Joshua has the nuts and goes big. Open, defend. Top 2 versus nothing. That hand is over fast. Open 3-bet. Alexander calls from the small blind with rainbow rundown. Not good. Hitting the pair. Goes check, and well, Alexander has the trips. Adrian has the trips. Should be fireworks. Adrian just shove it here. Alexander has 170 behind. And money goes in. And best hand wins. A very loose call from Alexander. So if I was defending small blind a bit wide in the beginning, now Alexander and Joshua are playing with pretty bad pre-flop ranges consistently. But they are the ones who min raise on splash spots, so they might be here just to make banana moves. There's 4 BB splash if you wonder why do I call. I closed the action, so we have to invest 12 cents into pot of 60 cents. So there's 4 BB dead money, which is kind of huge. So definitely want to see the flop with somewhat connected hands. Jonah flops, second nuts, and decides to check. And yeah, he's the pre-flop aggressor. I mean, 3 ways, when you check the flop, it's like people just aren't making moves on these monotone boards in multi-way pots. So I would say that in the long run, that check is going to cost you more in missed value than you gain by just betting half a pot here. And second check, I mean, when everyone checks the flop, just make a half a pot, it looks like a stab, 2 pairs will call you, and so on. And then river pairs, and now it's really hard to value bet anymore, so you have to check again, and you flop the second nuts, tricky 3 times, 0 value. Don't be tricky in wrong spots, and when you flop the flush, especially multi-way pot, that's not the spot to get tricky. Button open, so both players flop the ace. Jonah has open-ender, half a pot cheaper, go 3/4. And then 2 pairs, but Joshua has a cutter and a 6 blocker. And he decides to donk half a pot, which is weird sizing. What is the range we want to donk here with half a pot? I mean, if we actually had the 6-7, we definitely want to protect it. If we had 6-7 with ace high flush draw, that might make sense. Would we have played the flop differently? So I don't like the sizing. And then both players have the a6. And now this is kind of interesting bet. Is this a bluff or value? And if it's a value, then what worse hand will call you? Ace-5, ace-3, ace-4. Not so sure about that. That's pretty thin value. Ace-X, thin value. But no better hands will fold. Jonah will never fold 5 high straight here versus Joshua. So I don't like the river bet. Or then if you wanna get value, then go like 1/3 blocker. And it's a split pot. Blind versus blind. And Mikhail C bets most likely and Jonah folds. And we have a lot of hands here. Remember to take breaks if the video is too long for you. Blind versus blind. Joshua opens, I defend. Middle pair only. Joshua has cutter and nut flush draw, doesn't go for c-bet. Not sure if he went for check raise or why would he check. But then turn is a 4 and once again check, check, and river is a 10. And now comes the bet, and once again, is this a bluff or value? I mean, if I had a jack or better, I would never fold here. So I think it's a bet that doesn't really work as a bluff, and it doesn't work as a value. Kind of bet that doesn't achieve anything. And now we are only 3-handed. Let's see how many hands we have here. The games start to die a little. Pocket kings, limps. Yeah, this was weird. With this rate, well, I mean, small stakes rate, we shouldn't have a limping range on the small blind unless there's a splash money involved or antes. So it's weird to see Joshua limping here. Flush draw, picks up the 4. We have the cutter and the flush draw. Happy to see the river, and we make the nuts. No value. Okay, we have around 15 hands left. But it's 300. Open 3-bet call. We missed the flop. Nothing interesting there. Let me see. Do we have... Okay, we will have 1 bigger pot coming. So let's go until that one. Once again, limp from Joshua. Close the flop with 2 pairs. Then I barrel the turn with cutter and the top pair, and Joshua folds his 2 pairs. I think heads up. You kind of want to continue with those. Now he opens. Top 2 versus our nuts. Goes really small. And calls, turns, flush draw, and he even has the cutter, so calls the bet, and river is a blank rebet, he folds. Top pair, I like the bet, made me fold the best hand. Nothing interesting there, and now this is the last hand of the video. Open, call, and pop in top 2 with the flush draw and goes for check. I would like Joshua to just bet. The hand is so strong to start to build up the pot. He's blocking ace king. It's not the flop where I would bluff. I mean, ace high board versus pre-flop aggressor. It's a flop where we really don't bluff in reality. So we hit the nuts on the turn. And now Joshua pots. We raise. Of course he calls. And river completes the flush, giving him the nuts. And he decides to donk. Yeah, I think he needs to donk. But when he pots, it's so easy for me to fold the straight. If I had a flush, I would not fold. So the question is my range more flush heavy or straight heavy? And when flop goes check, check, and I raise the turn, it's kind of, I represent the straight. If I have a straight, then if he bets half a pot or 90 cents, then it's easier to get me to call that, because when he calls my raise on the turn, it's so obvious that he really has the flush very often. So I just fold my hand here. So there it is. Few pots. Nothing super tricky, super interesting. But if you want to see more detailed analysis of some of the hands, just let me know. There wasn't any spot where we could have used poker juice to check out some ranges and so on. But we will have the next one next month in April. And if you want to join, then feel free to come into PLO Order, and then for the study game, last time it wasn't run it once. Most likely we will continue playing there, because then we get the whole cards open and it's easier for me to talk through the hands where I'm not involved or doesn't go to showdown. But hope you enjoyed. I will see you next time on the next video. Bye bye.